Good evening, gentlemen. I had a question from one of my friends, and he asked me, can you tell me, Captain, whether Patel would have been a better Prime Minister than Nehru? I was having a look at the various posts, which have been put up on YouTube and other places, that is the social media sites, and many people were pointing out that in 1947, the Congress Working Committee, which had 15 members, had only one supporter for Nehru and 14 had voted against him in favor of Patel. That means it was 14 is to 1 ratio, but yet Gandhi overruled it and made Nehru the Prime Minister of India. So the question which people have asked me is, would Patel have been a better Prime Minister for India? Well, first of all, let me tell everybody that Patel was a towering figure of the independence movement. He was an intellectual, but I will say one thing more about him, that he had the same philosophy as Nehru in the sense he was fed on a diet of ahimsa and non-violence. He had been a colleague of Gandhi for close to 40 years, and obviously Gandhi's philosophy has seeped into his brain. Like Nehru also believed in ahimsa. And then another thing which both these leaders believed in was that the greater danger to the world was from colonialism and imperialism. Both of them did not have any comprehension of what is geopolitical power and what is it to dominate the world. I mean, they had no wish to dominate the world, both these leaders. They thought everything is honky-dory, you take power in India, we'll rule, and we don't even need the army. I mean, this was the opinion of Pandit Nehru, as you all know, in 1948, when the chief of the Indian army, the CNC, had gone to Nehru with some proposals for reform of the army, threw them away. He said, I don't need them. In fact, I don't need the army. Don't come to me with these proposals. So, Patel was no different. Now, the question arises, the first question which I must answer is, what would Patel have done on the Kashmir issue? There are many people saying, अगर कश्मीर के टाइम उस वक्त जो क्राइसिस थी, Patel Prime Minister होता तो Kashmir problem would not have been there. Yes, I agree, it would not have been there, but in a different way. Kashmir would not have been a part of India if Patel had been Prime Minister. You see, Patel had a philosophy that India should only be for Hindu majority states. And he was not at all keen that Kashmir should be integrated into the Indian Union because it was a Muslim majority state. Another thing we must remember is that Patel had written a letter to a friend of his in which he had articulated his policy. That was, I will keep Hyderabad, let Pakistan keep Kashmir. I mean, he was more concerned about Hyderabad at that time than about Kashmir. And he was ready to let Kashmir go to Pakistan. In fact, there is a record from one of the books written by Leonard Mosley in the last days of the British Raj. He mentioned that Lord Mountbatten knew the mind of Patel and he went to Srinagar in 1948 beginning and told the Maharaja that if he decided to accede to Pakistan, there would be no problem, as one prominent member of the Indian cabinet was of the view that Kashmir could go to Pakistan. So, gentlemen, the first thing which I visualize it, if Kashmir would not have come to India, that means if Patel had been Prime Minister, I think India would have lost Kashmir, and then you can definitely say there would have been no Kashmir problem. Nehru was keen to keep Kashmir in India. That is a fact. But again, he lacked geopolitical sense and the power, the spunk of a great leader. And he was just silent. In fact, he agreed for a ceasefire at a critical moment when the Indian army was advancing forward. Whether they would advance forward or no is a touch and go question, because at that time the Pakistan army had actively come on side of the Kashmiri militants and terrorists who had stormed into Kashmir. So it would have been a battle, but Indian army could have won, and that's a different issue. Now we should not forget the fact that at that time Patel was the Deputy Prime Minister of India, and that's a very powerful position. He was also the Home Minister. And in cabinet meetings, if he differed with Nehru on the ceasefire, he could have vociferously articulated his opposition to the ceasefire in the cabinet meetings. But I have seen no record anywhere of the minute that Patel at any time had opposed the ceasefire in Kashmir. So that is the second point. The first point, of course, he was ready to let Kashmir go. Third point, let us not forget that he was not a dynamic man like Jinnah. Now, I'll give you an example. The state of Kalat in Balochistan had declared independence and acceded to India. But within a month, Jinnah sent the Pakistan army in Balochistan and the Nawab of Kalat signed on the dotted line. In contrast, Patel allowed Hyderabad more than a year's life. Hyderabad declared independence, and there was a chap called Cotton who was a gun runner and bringing in weapons into Hyderabad to arm the Razakars. And at that time, Patel was sitting on his haunches. I think if the Nizam had not agreed, it was imperative that within 10 or 15 days of independence, Patel, who was the Home Minister, should send the army in. But he wasted time for over a year before he acted. So that is his weakness. As far as Kashmir is concerned, I have already pointed out what has happened. Then there are many people who talk that if Patel had been Prime Minister, there would have been no Tibet problem. Again, I think this is just beating a dead horse with a stick. Patel was the Deputy Prime Minister, and in 47 when India had become independent, if he had strategic vision, in the cabinet meetings he should have brought out this fact and told Nehru that, look, we need to have Tibet as a buffer, let's send the army in there. At that time, mind you, the Communist army was fighting a life and death battle with the nationalists in China. And it was a free-for-all in Tibet. And this was the time the Indian army should have moved into Tibet and occupied it. But Nehru, of course, didn't think about it, and neither did Patel. So how was Patel different from Nehru? And secondly, in 49, when the Chinese army finally attacked Tibet, and in that campaign, Nehru was sitting on his haunches, and Patel did nothing as well. He did write one letter to the Prime Minister saying that we should have intervened in Tibet to support the Tibetans against China. But writing a letter has got no meaning when you're the Deputy Home Minister. These are the points he should have raised in a cabinet meeting, which he never did, not to my knowledge, and not to the knowledge of the historians. And at that time, in any case, I think he suffered a heart attack and he was on his last legs. And God forbid, sadly, he passed away in 1950. But let's accept the fact that Patel had no contribution to make on the support to Tibet, and most of the time he was silent. Then many people also talk that Patel was a man who was a staunch Hindu or something like that. Yes, he was a staunch Hindu, but it didn't stop him from banning the RSS. Mahatma Gandhi was assassinated on 30th January, and just 4 days later, on 4th of February, he banned the RSS. That's on paper, it's on file. The RSS was banned, and he told the RSS leader that you are being banned because you do not follow the policies of the Indian government. And that is ahimsa and equality for all. And the RSS remained banned for a good part of 2 years before the ban was rescinded. I think at the end of 49. And Patel died in 1950. So the question that Patel would have been a better Prime Minister than Nehru, I think is a fallacy. I think there's no difference between the two. The country would have gone the same way as it is going now, except with one exception, that is, if Patel were Prime Minister, Kashmir would not be a part of India, and the resultant terrorism which is on in Kashmir won't be there. So, gentlemen, I hope this question is answered. Many people say that Patel would have done this, Patel would have done that. I admire the man. He was a strong man, and all credit to him that he integrated about 500 states with India. But let's accept one fact that the states have been given no choice, and all credit should go to the Chief Secretary V.P. Menon, who went about conveying a message. As you all know, the Government of India Act talked of the doctrine of lapse, and it said it once British rule lapses, the various states have only one option, and that is either they join Pakistan or they join India. Independence was not an option. So obviously the states had to decide one way or the other, and most of the states were persuaded when V.P. Menon met them, like Holkar, Patiala, all these people, that well, we should join the Indian Union because there was an option. Hyderabad tried a different stunt, and Patel let it thrive for a year and a half, I think. And he was sitting on his haunches during that time, and he got worried that Hyderabad is not coming to India, and that is the time he made those silly letters and his contention that Kashmir should be given away in lieu of Hyderabad. Gentlemen, I'll close now. I think I've answered the question, and I don't think Patel would have been anything better than Nehru. Perhaps I think he would be a degree behind Nehru, because we would have lost Kashmir if Patel was the Prime Minister. I will close now, gentlemen, and say goodbye to you all. I look forward to your support, and I hope you will subscribe to my channel, share it with your friends, and come back for more. And don't forget to press that icon at the end so that you can get all the new videos that I make. And I will tell you about myself. I'm a senior Air Force officer. I've done the Staff College. I have been a member of the Air Staff Inspection Team. And I have also written 22 books. So, gentlemen, I will close now and wish you all the best and wait for my next video. Thank you, sir.